Maria Thompson stepped out of her silver Mercedes in the parking lot of First National Bank of Springfield. The morning sun caught the gold buttons on her navy blue business suit as she adjusted her leather briefcase. At 42 years old, she had built an empire from nothing, but today she simply needed to make a withdrawal for her daughter's college tuition. The journey to this moment had not been easy. 20 years ago, Maria had arrived in Springfield with nothing but a business degree, $200, and a dream to create something meaningful. She had faced rejection after rejection when seeking startup loans, with bank after bank telling her that her restaurant concept was too risky. Some loan officers had been polite but firm, while others had barely looked at her business plan before dismissing her. Determined not to give up, Maria had worked 3 jobs while developing her business idea. She cleaned offices at night, worked as a waitress during lunch shifts, and spent her evenings creating the most detailed business plan anyone had ever seen. Her concept was simple but revolutionary for Springfield. A soul food restaurant that also served as a community gathering place, offering cooking classes and hosting local events. When traditional banks continued to reject her, Maria turned to alternative funding sources. She convinced her church community to invest, gathered support from local businesswomen, and even received a small grant from a minority business development program. With $30,000, she opened Maria's Kitchen in a small storefront on the east side of town. The restaurant struggled initially. Springfield was a conservative town, and many residents were hesitant to try the new establishment. Maria worked 18-hour days, cooking, serving, cleaning, and managing every aspect of the business. She nearly went bankrupt twice in the first 2 years, but her determination and the quality of her food slowly won over the community. The breakthrough came when Maria catered a wedding for the mayor's daughter. Word spread quickly about the amazing food and excellent service. Soon Maria's Kitchen became the go-to place for celebrations, business meetings, and family gatherings. The restaurant that banks had deemed too risky was now booked solid 3 months in advance. Success at the restaurant allowed Maria to expand. She opened a second location, then a third. Each restaurant maintained the same community focus while offering employment opportunities to local residents. Maria made it a point to hire single mothers, former inmates trying to restart their lives, and young people who needed their first job opportunity. As her restaurant empire grew, Maria began investing in real estate. She purchased the buildings that housed her restaurants, then started buying other commercial properties around Springfield. Her keen eye for undervalued properties and her ability to revitalize neighborhoods made her one of the most successful real estate investors in the region. 10 years after opening her first restaurant, Maria had accumulated enough wealth to start her own investment company. Thompson Investments focused on supporting minority-owned businesses and revitalizing neglected communities. She provided the kind of funding and mentorship that she had desperately needed 2 decades earlier, but had been unable to find. Maria's success story became legendary in Springfield. Local newspapers featured her on their front pages. The Chamber of Commerce invited her to speak at events. Young entrepreneurs sought her advice and guidance. She had transformed from a struggling single mother with a dream into one of the most influential business leaders in the city. Despite her success, Maria remained grounded and committed to her community. She established a scholarship fund for underprivileged students, sponsored Little League teams, and continued to offer cooking classes at her original restaurant. Every Thursday evening, she could be found in the kitchen of Maria's Kitchen, teaching young people how to prepare healthy, affordable meals. Her daughter, Angela, was now 20 years old and studying business at State University. Angela had grown up watching her mother work tirelessly to build their empire, and she planned to join the family business after graduation. The tuition payment Maria needed to make today represented another milestone in their family's journey from poverty to prosperity. Maria had been banking at First National for over 15 years. She had chosen the bank initially because of its convenient location near her first restaurant. Over the years, her relationship with the bank had grown along with her business success. She maintained multiple accounts there, including personal checking and savings, business operating accounts for each restaurant, and investment accounts for Thompson Investments. The bank had certainly benefited from Maria's business. Her companies kept substantial balances across various accounts, and she had referred numerous other business owners to First National over the years. Maria estimated that her relationship had brought millions of dollars in deposits and loans to the institution. As she walked toward the bank's front entrance, Maria reflected on how much her life had changed since those early days of struggle. She now owned 5 restaurants, a successful investment company, and dozens of commercial properties throughout Springfield and the surrounding counties. Forbes magazine had recently included her in their list of most successful minority entrepreneurs in the region. The impressive limestone facade of First National Bank stood before her, its brass nameplate gleaming in the morning sunlight. Maria had walked through these doors hundreds of times over the years, usually for routine business transactions or meetings with commercial loan officers. Today's visit was supposed to be simple. Withdraw $50,000 for Angela's final semester tuition and room and board. Maria pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped into the marble-floored lobby. The familiar sounds of banking business surrounded her, the quiet conversations between tellers and customers, the soft clicking of computer keyboards, and the gentle hum of the air conditioning system. She nodded politely to the security guard, who had seen her many times before, and approached the teller windows to conduct what she expected to be a routine transaction. Maria approached the teller window where a young woman with blonde hair and a nervous smile was helping customers. The nameplate on the counter read, Jennifer Walsh, Customer Service Representative. Jennifer appeared to be in her early 20s, possibly new to the banking industry based on how she kept glancing at her computer screen and referencing a manual beside her keyboard. "Good morning," Maria said pleasantly, placing her identification and bank card on the counter. "I need to withdraw $50,000 from my business account for my daughter's tuition payment." Jennifer's eyes widened slightly at the amount, but she maintained her professional demeanor as she reached for Maria's identification. However, as she examined the driver's license, her expression began to change. She looked from the ID to Maria's face several times, as if trying to verify that they matched. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I'll need to verify this identification," Jennifer said, her tone becoming more cautious. "This seems like a significant withdrawal, and we have procedures for large transactions." Maria nodded understandingly. Banks did have security protocols for substantial withdrawals, and $50,000 certainly qualified as a large transaction. "Of course, I understand the need for verification. I've been banking here for over 15 years, so my account should show a long history of transactions." Jennifer began typing on her computer, but her movements seemed hesitant and uncertain. After a few minutes of clicking and typing, she frowned at her screen. "Ma'am, I'm not seeing an account with this balance available for withdrawal. Are you sure you have the correct account information?" "I'm quite certain," Maria replied calmly, though she felt a slight flutter of concern. "Let me give you my account number to make sure we're looking at the right account." She recited the number she had memorized years ago. Jennifer entered the number and waited for the screen to load. When the information appeared, her frown deepened. "This account shows a balance, but I'm not authorized to process a withdrawal of this amount. I'll need to call my supervisor." Maria began to feel the first stirrings of irritation. She had made similar withdrawals before without any complications. However, she reminded herself that the bank might have updated their policies, or Jennifer might simply be new and unfamiliar with procedures for established customers. "That's fine," Maria said, maintaining her composure. "I have time to wait for your supervisor." Jennifer picked up her phone and spoke in hushed tones to someone on the other end. Maria couldn't hear the entire conversation, but she caught fragments. Large withdrawal, verification needed, and suspicious activity. The last phrase made Maria's stomach tighten with concern and growing anger. While waiting, Maria noticed that Jennifer kept glancing at her nervously, as if she posed some kind of threat. Other customers in line behind Maria began to shift impatiently, and she could feel their eyes on her as the wait continued. The situation was becoming increasingly uncomfortable and embarrassing. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 5 minutes, a middle-aged white man in a dark suit approached the window. His nameplate identified him as Robert Stevens, branch supervisor. He had a stern expression and carried himself with the authority of someone accustomed to handling difficult situations. "Good morning, ma'am," Mr. Stevens said, though his tone was more formal than friendly. "I understand you're trying to withdraw a substantial amount of money. We'll need to verify your identity and the legitimacy of this transaction before we can proceed." Maria felt her patience beginning to wear thin. I've already provided my identification, and I've been a customer here for 15 years. I'm simply withdrawing money from my own account for my daughter's college tuition. I understand your frustration, Mr. Stevens replied. But with money laundering regulations and security concerns, we must be thorough with large cash transactions. Can you provide additional documentation proving your identity and the purpose of this withdrawal? Additional documentation? Maria's voice rose slightly, drawing more attention from other customers and bank employees. I've given you my driver's license and my bank card. What more do you need? Perhaps a utility bill or some other proof of address, Mr. Stevens suggested. And if this is truly for tuition, you should have documentation from the college showing the amount due. Maria stared at him in disbelief. I don't carry my electric bill with me when I go to the bank. And I don't need to prove to you what I'm doing with my own money. This is my account, my money, and I have every right to access it. The conversation was attracting attention from throughout the bank. Other tellers had stopped their work to watch the interaction. Customers in other lines were turning to see what was causing the commotion. Maria could hear whispered conversations and felt the weight of numerous eyes upon her. Ma'am, please lower your voice, Mr. Stevens said, glancing around the lobby with obvious concern about the scene they were creating. We're just trying to follow proper procedures. Large cash withdrawals require additional verification to prevent fraud and money laundering. I am not money laundering, Maria said firmly, her voice carrying clearly through the now quiet bank lobby. I am a legitimate businesswoman trying to access my own money from my own account at a bank where I have been a customer for over 15 years. Jennifer, who had been watching the exchange nervously, leaned toward her supervisor and whispered something in his ear. Maria couldn't hear what she said, but she saw Mr. Stevens nod grimly and his expression become even more stern. Ma'am, I'm afraid we're going to need you to provide additional verification before we can process this transaction, Mr. Stevens announced loudly enough for nearby customers to hear clearly. We take security very seriously here, and this withdrawal raises several red flags. The phrase red flags echoed through the bank lobby like a gunshot. Maria felt every eye in the building focused on her, and she could practically hear the assumptions being made about why a black woman would raise red flags when trying to withdraw money from her own account. The humiliation burned in her chest, but beneath it a cold anger was beginning to build. The tension in the bank lobby was now thick enough to cut with a knife. Maria could feel the stares of every customer and employee in the building. Some looked curious, others uncomfortable, and a few seemed to be making judgmental assumptions about what kind of person would cause such a disturbance at a bank. I want to speak with the bank president, Maria said firmly, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard and respected. This treatment is unacceptable, and I demand to speak with someone in actual authority. Mr. Stevens exchanged glances with Jennifer, and Maria caught a look that seemed to say, I told you so. The supervisor cleared his throat and spoke in a condescending tone that made Maria's blood pressure rise. Ma'am, Mr. Davidson, our bank president, is a very busy man. He doesn't typically get involved in routine security verification procedures. I'm sure we can resolve this matter if you'll just cooperate with our standard protocols. Routine security verification? Maria's voice rose again and she no longer cared who was listening. I have been banking here for 15 years. I own multiple businesses in this community. I employ over 100 people. There is nothing routine about the way you're treating me. Several customers in line had given up waiting and moved to other tellers, but others seemed frozen in place, unwilling to miss the drama unfolding before them. Maria noticed an elderly white couple near the front door whispering to each other while staring in her direction. Their expressions suggested they had already made up their minds about what kind of person she was. Let me try a different approach, Maria said, attempting to regain her composure. Run my account history. Look at my average balances. Check how long I've been a customer. Verify my business relationships with this bank. That should be more than enough to establish that I'm exactly who I say I am. Jennifer began typing frantically on her computer, while Mr. Stevens stood behind her, watching the screen. As information loaded, Maria could see their expressions changing from suspicion to confusion. Jennifer's eyes widened as she scrolled through the account history, and she whispered something to her supervisor that made him lean closer to the screen. Ma'am, Mr. Stevens said, his tone slightly less aggressive but still wary. I can see that you do have an established relationship with our bank. However, This doesn't change our security protocols for large cash withdrawals. We still need additional verification. Maria felt her carefully maintained control beginning to slip. What exactly are you suggesting? That I somehow stole $50,000 and put it in an account I've maintained for 15 years? That I've been playing some elaborate long-term con game? We're not suggesting anything improper, Mr. Stevens replied quickly, glancing around the lobby nervously. We're simply following federal banking regulations that require additional verification for suspicious transactions. Suspicious transactions? Maria's voice carried clearly to every corner of the bank. What exactly is suspicious about a businesswoman withdrawing money from her own account? Is it the amount? Is it the fact that I'm black? What exactly triggers your suspicion? The racial element hanging in the air made several customers visibly uncomfortable. Some shuffled their feet and looked away, while others seemed to lean in closer to hear how the bank employees would respond to such a direct challenge. Ma'am, please don't make this about race, Mr. Stevens said, his face reddening. We treat all customers equally regardless of their background. This is purely a matter of following proper procedures. If you treat all customers equally, Maria shot back, then show me the white businessman you've humiliated in your lobby this week for trying to withdraw money from his own account. Show me the white woman you've accused of suspicious activity for accessing her own funds. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the usual background noise of banking seemed to have stopped as everyone in the building focused on the confrontation. Maria could practically hear hearts beating in the sudden quiet. At that moment, a security guard approached from his position near the front door. He was a large man, probably in his 50s with gray hair and a stern expression. His hand rested casually but visibly on his radio as he addressed Maria. Ma'am, you're causing a disturbance in the bank. I'm going to need you to lower your voice or I'll have to ask you to leave the premises. Maria stared at him in disbelief. I'm causing a disturbance by trying to withdraw money from my own account? I'm the problem here? You're raising your voice and making other customers uncomfortable, the security guard replied. If you can't conduct your business in a calm, respectful manner, you'll need to leave and come back when you can behave appropriately. The condescending tone and the implication that she was behaving inappropriately pushed Maria past her breaking point. 20 years of building a business empire, 15 years of loyal banking relationships, decades of proving herself in a community that had initially rejected her, and this was how she was treated when she simply needed to access her own money. Behave appropriately? Maria's voice was now ice-cold with controlled fury. I am a respected businesswoman in this community. I employ a significant portion of your customer base. My companies have brought millions of dollars through this bank. And you're telling me to behave appropriately because I'm upset about being treated like a criminal? Mr. Stevens stepped forward, clearly trying to de-escalate the situation before it spiraled further out of control. Ma'am, perhaps we can step into my office and discuss this privately. I'm sure we can work something out away from the lobby. No, Maria said firmly. I'm not going anywhere. This conversation started in your lobby because you chose to humiliate me in front of your other customers. If you want to resolve it, you can resolve it right here where everyone can see how you treat people. The standoff continued as bank employees exchanged worried glances. Customer complaints were one thing, but a public confrontation involving accusations of racial discrimination was exactly the kind of situation that could escalate quickly and attract unwanted attention from regulators, media, and corporate headquarters. The standoff in the bank lobby stretched for several more tense seconds. Maria could see the wheels turning in Mr. Stevens' head as he tried to figure out how to handle a situation that was clearly spiraling beyond his control. The security guard maintained his intimidating position, while Jennifer looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Finally, Maria had reached her limit. 20 years of building her empire, 15 years of loyal banking, and a lifetime of proving herself had led to this moment of absolute disrespect. The anger that had been building in her chest transformed into something colder and more determined. You know what? Maria said, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level that somehow carried more authority than her earlier raised voice. I think it's time for me to have that conversation with Mr. Davidson after all. Ma'am, as I explained, the bank president is not available for routine customer complaints, Mr. Stevens replied, though his confidence seemed to be wavering slightly. If you'd like to file a formal complaint, I can provide you with the appropriate paperwork. Maria reached into her briefcase and pulled out her cell phone. The movement caused the security guard to tense slightly, but she simply held the phone up where everyone could see it. Actually, I think Bill will take my call. She dialed a number from her contacts and waited for someone to pick up. The bank lobby remained silent except for the quiet ringing that could be heard through her phone's speaker. After 3 rings, a familiar voice answered. Maria. Good morning. I wasn't expecting to hear from you today. Good morning, Bill, Maria replied, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear clearly. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm downstairs in the lobby having some trouble with your staff. Apparently they think I'm some kind of criminal trying to steal money from my own account. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Bill Davidson spoke again, his voice had changed completely. You're in our lobby right now? What exactly is happening down there? Mr. Stevens's face had gone completely pale. Jennifer looked confused, glancing back and forth between Maria and her supervisor as if trying to piece together what was happening. The security guard's hand had moved away from his radio, and he suddenly looked much less certain about his authority in the situation. Well, Bill, Maria continued, her voice carrying clearly through the now silent lobby, your employee Jennifer here seems to think that a $50,000 withdrawal from my business account requires special verification beyond my identification and bank card. Your supervisor, Mr. Stevens, believes I'm engaged in suspicious activity, and your security guard thinks I'm causing a disturbance because I objected to being treated like a common criminal. The silence from the phone was deafening. Every person in the bank lobby was straining to hear both sides of the conversation. Maria could see comprehension dawning on several faces as people began to realize that this was not a typical customer service complaint. Maria, Bill's voice came through the phone with obvious concern and growing alarm. Please tell me that my employees did not just treat one of our board members and largest shareholders like a common customer. The impact of those words hit the lobby like a thunderclap. Jennifer's mouth fell open in shock. Mr. Stevens looked like he was about to faint. The security guard took a step backward as if he'd just realized he was standing too close to a live electrical wire. Oh, but they did, Bill, Maria replied calmly, enjoying the shocked expressions around her. In fact, your security guard just threatened to have me removed from the building. Apparently, requesting to withdraw my own money constitutes causing a disturbance. Jesus Christ. Bill's voice came through the phone, and everyone could hear the panic and anger in his tone. Maria, I'm so sorry. This is absolutely unacceptable. I'm on my way down right now. Actually, Bill, don't bother, Maria said, her voice taking on a tone of cold authority that no one in the lobby had heard before. I think I can handle this situation myself. After all, as you mentioned, I am a board member and the largest individual shareholder of this bank. She ended the call and looked directly at Mr. Stevens, who appeared to be having difficulty breathing properly. For those who might not have heard clearly, let me clarify the situation. My name is Maria Thompson. I own 37% of the shares of First National Bank of Springfield. I have served on the board of directors for the past 8 years. I chair the Community Development Committee and the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. The lobby was so quiet that you could have heard a pin drop on the marble floor. Several customers who had been waiting in line were now openly staring with their mouths agape. Maria could see some of them pulling out their phones, probably to record what was happening or to share the story with friends. Now then, Maria continued, addressing Mr. Stevens directly, would you like to explain to me why you treated one of your bank's owners like a criminal? Would you like to tell me why you assumed that a black woman requesting to withdraw money from her own account must be engaged in suspicious activity? Mr. Stevens opened and closed his mouth several times, but no words came out. His face had gone from pale to bright red, and sweat was beginning to form on his forehead despite the bank's air conditioning. Jennifer, meanwhile, had begun frantically typing on her computer, probably looking up Maria's account information with new understanding. As the details appeared on her screen, her eyes grew wider and wider. She was seeing not just the account balances, but the full scope of Maria's relationship with the bank, multiple business accounts, investment portfolios, loan relationships, and transaction histories that clearly established her as one of their most important customers. Furthermore, Maria continued, her voice gaining strength and authority with each word, I want to understand why your diversity training and customer service training have failed so completely that my employees would treat any customer this way, let alone someone with my relationship to this institution. The word employees hung in the air like a sword. Mr. Stevens finally managed to find his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. Ms. Thompson, we didn't realize. We were just following procedures. Following procedures? Maria's voice cut through his stammering like a blade. Your procedures include assuming that black customers are criminals? Your procedures include publicly humiliating people who request to access their own money? Your procedures include threatening to have bank owners removed from their own building? The revelation of Maria's identity sent shockwaves through the bank lobby that seemed to ripple outward in visible waves. Jennifer had gone completely pale and was gripping her desk as if she might collapse. Mr. Stevens looked like a man who had just realized his career was over. The security guard had quietly retreated toward the front door, apparently hoping to become invisible. Other customers in the lobby were having varied reactions. Some looked embarrassed, as if they felt guilty for assuming the worst about Maria during the confrontation. Others appeared fascinated, whispering urgently to each other about what they had just witnessed. A few were openly recording with their phones, realizing they were documenting what would likely become a viral story about discrimination and justice. Maria let the silence stretch for another moment, allowing the full weight of the situation to settle over everyone present. She had spent 2 decades building her reputation and her business empire, and she was not about to let this moment pass without making sure everyone understood the magnitude of what had just occurred. Jennifer, Maria said, addressing the young teller directly, I want you to process my withdrawal now. $50,000 as I originally requested 30 minutes ago. Yes, ma'am, absolutely right away, Jennifer stammered, her hands shaking as she began typing on her keyboard. I'm so sorry for the confusion. I didn't know. I should have. I'm really sorry. The apology is appreciated, Maria replied coolly. But what I'm more interested in understanding is why you felt the need to call for additional verification in the first place. I provided proper identification. I gave you my account number and you could see the account history. What exactly triggered your suspicion? Jennifer's hands froze over her keyboard. She glanced desperately at Mr. Stevens, but he was still too shocked to offer any help. The question hung in the air and everyone in the lobby could feel the weight of it. They all knew the answer, but no one wanted to say it out loud. I don't know, Jennifer whispered. It was just, the amount seemed large and I'm new and I wanted to be careful. Careful about what? Maria pressed gently but firmly. You handle large transactions every day. Business owners regularly make substantial withdrawals. What was different about my transaction that made you feel the need to be especially careful? The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears as she struggled to find an answer that didn't expose the unconscious bias that had driven her actions. Mr. Stevens finally attempted to rescue his employee. Ms. Thompson, Jennifer is new and was probably just being overly cautious. I'm sure there was no intentional discrimination. No intentional discrimination, Maria repeated slowly as if tasting the words. That's an interesting phrase, Mr. Stevens. Are you suggesting that unconscious discrimination is somehow more acceptable than intentional discrimination? Mr. Stevens realized he had walked into a trap. No, of course not. I didn't mean to imply, because here's what I observed, Maria continued, her voice taking on the tone of someone delivering a lecture. A black woman walked into your bank and requested to withdraw a substantial amount of money. Despite providing proper identification and having a 15-year banking relationship, she was immediately viewed with suspicion. She was questioned publicly, humiliated in front of other customers, and threatened with removal from the building. Can you help me understand how that treatment aligns with your bank's stated commitment to diversity and equal treatment of all customers? By now, Bill Davidson had arrived in the lobby, having run down from his office on the 3rd floor. He was a tall, thin man in his 60s with gray hair and a worried expression. As he approached the group around the teller window, Maria could see him taking in the scene, his employees looking terrified, customers staring and recording, and Maria standing in the center of it all with the calm authority of someone who owned the place. Maria, Bill said breathlessly as he reached them, I cannot begin to tell you how sorry I am about this situation. This is absolutely not how we treat our customers, especially not someone with your relationship to this institution. Bill, Maria replied with a slight nod of acknowledgement, I appreciate your concern, but I think this situation extends far beyond customer service. This is about the culture and training of your employees. This is about unconscious bias and systemic discrimination. This is about whether First National Bank truly practices the values it claims to uphold. Bill's face grew serious as he realized the full implications of what had occurred. A discrimination incident involving a board member and major shareholder could result in regulatory investigations, media scrutiny, and significant damage to the bank's reputation. More importantly, it suggested deeper problems with their hiring, training, and corporate culture. "You're absolutely right," Bill said, his voice carrying the weight of his position and the gravity of the situation. "This represents a failure at multiple levels, and we need to address it comprehensively." He turned to address Mr. Stevens directly. "Robert, I want you to suspend any customer service duties immediately. You will report to HR within the hour for a full review of this incident. Your handling of this situation is completely unacceptable." Mr. Stevens nodded mutely, clearly understanding that his career at First National was likely over. He had not only failed to properly serve an important customer, but he had created a potential legal and public relations nightmare for the institution. "Jennifer," Bill continued, "you will also meet with HR today. However, I recognize that you're new and may not have received adequate training. We'll be reviewing our onboarding process to ensure this doesn't happen again." "Thank you, sir," Jennifer whispered, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks as she completed Maria's transaction with shaking hands. Maria watched these proceedings with mixed emotions. Part of her was satisfied to see consequences for the discrimination she had experienced. However, she also recognized that firing a few employees wouldn't address the systemic issues that had created this situation. "Bill," she said as Jennifer handed her the cash for her withdrawal, "I want to convene an emergency meeting of the board's diversity committee. This incident has revealed some serious gaps in our training and policies that need immediate attention." "Of course," Bill agreed immediately. "Whatever you think is necessary to prevent this from happening again. And I want a full review of our customer service protocols," Maria continued. "If our own employees don't recognize board members and major shareholders, how are they treating other minority customers who don't have my resources and connections?" The question hung in the air, and everyone present understood its implications. If Maria Thompson, one of the most successful business people in Springfield, could be treated this way, what happened to customers who lacked her power and influence? 3 months later, Maria sat in the boardroom of First National Bank, looking out over Springfield's downtown district through the large windows that lined the executive conference room. The view encompassed several of her restaurants and commercial properties, tangible reminders of the journey that had brought her from struggling entrepreneur to banking executive. Today marked the presentation of the comprehensive review that had been launched following the incident in the bank lobby. The discrimination incident had initially created exactly the kind of media attention that financial institutions typically try to avoid. Local news stations had picked up the story within hours, thanks to the cell phone videos recorded by customers in the lobby that day. Social media had amplified the story nationally, with hashtags like "Banking While Black" and "Maria Owns the Bank" trending for several days. However, rather than trying to minimize the incident or control the narrative, Maria had chosen to embrace it as an opportunity for meaningful change. She worked with Bill Davidson and the board to turn the crisis into a catalyst for examining and improving their practices across all areas of the bank's operations. The results of their comprehensive review were both enlightening and disturbing. The investigation had revealed patterns of differential treatment that extended far beyond the single incident in the lobby. Mystery shoppers of different racial backgrounds had been sent to various branch locations, and the disparities in service were stark and consistent. Black and Hispanic customers were more likely to be questioned about large transactions, more likely to have their identification scrutinized, and less likely to receive information about premium banking services. "The data is clear and unambiguous," said Dr. Rachel Martinez, the diversity consultant who had led the review. The incident with Ms. Thompson was not an isolated event, but rather a symptom of systemic bias throughout the organization. The boardroom was filled with senior executives, department heads, and board members, all of whom had spent the past 3 months grappling with uncomfortable truths about their institution. The review had examined everything from hiring practices to customer service protocols, from marketing materials to community outreach programs. Our hiring data shows that management positions are significantly less diverse than our customer base, Dr. Martinez continued. Our training programs focus heavily on technical banking skills, but provide minimal education about unconscious bias and cultural competency. Our performance metrics reward efficiency and risk management, but don't measure customer satisfaction across different demographic groups. Maria listened to the presentation with a mixture of vindication and sadness. Vindication because the data confirmed what she had long suspected about differential treatment in banking. Sadness because it meant that countless customers had experienced discrimination without having her resources and platform to address it. Bill Davidson, who had spent the past 3 months personally involved in every aspect of the review, looked visibly aged by the process. The question now, he said to the room, is how we translate these findings into meaningful action that creates lasting change. Maria stood to address the group, her presence commanding immediate attention from everyone in the room. Over the past 3 months, her role in the bank had evolved from major shareholder to active leader in their transformation efforts. The solutions need to be as comprehensive as the problems we've identified, she began. This isn't about sensitivity training or policy statements. This is about fundamentally changing how we operate as an institution. She outlined the recommendations that the Diversity Committee had developed. Every employee, from entry-level tellers to senior executives, would participate in extensive bias training. Customer service protocols would be standardized to ensure consistent treatment, regardless of customer demographics. Performance reviews would include metrics related to equitable customer service. The bank would establish a customer ombudsman position to investigate complaints about differential treatment. Furthermore, Maria continued, we're going to change our community investment approach. Instead of simply meeting regulatory requirements for community development, we're going to actively seek opportunities to support minority-owned businesses and underserved communities. The changes extended to the board level as well. First National would recruit additional diverse board members and require all directors to participate in ongoing education about equity and inclusion. They would also publish annual reports on their diversity metrics and community impact, creating accountability through transparency. I want to be clear about something, Maria said, looking around the room at faces that represented the old guard of Springfield banking. This isn't about political correctness or checking boxes. This is about good business practice. Our community is changing, and if we want to remain relevant and successful, we need to reflect and serve that changing community. The transformation wasn't without its challenges. Some longtime employees resisted the changes, arguing that the bank was overreacting to a single incident. A few customers expressed discomfort with the bank's new emphasis on diversity and inclusion. However, these voices were increasingly outnumbered by positive responses from the community. The story of Maria's confrontation and the bank's response had resonated far beyond Springfield. Other financial institutions began reaching out to learn about First National's approach to addressing systemic bias. Maria found herself speaking at banking conferences and diversity summits, sharing lessons learned from their transformation process. The most important thing we've learned, Maria told a conference of community bankers 6 months after the incident, is that good intentions aren't enough. You can't simply say you treat everyone equally and expect that to be true. You have to actively work to identify and eliminate bias in your systems and processes. For Maria personally, the incident had been both painful and empowering. Painful because it reminded her that despite all her success and achievement, she could still be viewed with suspicion and treated as a threat simply because of her race. Empowering because it had given her a platform to create change that extended far beyond her individual experience. The impact on the bank's business had been overwhelmingly positive. Their community development lending had increased dramatically, bringing in new business from minority entrepreneurs who had previously felt unwelcome. Employee satisfaction surveys showed improvement across all demographic groups. Customer complaints about differential treatment had virtually disappeared. Perhaps most significantly, the bank had become a model for other institutions grappling with similar issues. Their transparency about their problems and their commitment to meaningful solutions had earned respect throughout the banking industry, as Maria reflected on the journey from that humiliating morning in the bank lobby to this moment of institutional transformation. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The discrimination she had experienced had been wrong and hurtful, but it had also created an opportunity to address systemic problems that had affected countless other customers. Sometimes, she told her daughter Angela during one of their regular phone calls, the most difficult experiences create the most important opportunities for change. What matters isn't that discrimination happened, but how we responded to it and what we learned from it. The incident at First National Bank had become a case study in how individuals and institutions could confront bias and create meaningful change. But for Maria, it remained a reminder that progress requires constant vigilance and that true equality in business and society demands more than good intentions. It requires deliberate action and sustained commitment to justice.